Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay, you're fine.
Nope, I just have two things that we just need updated on. Okay, I'll call to order the Committee of Public Safety. See all members are present. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. And we second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unfinished business. Do we have any new referrals for consideration? A discussion. And what I wanted to do is just touch base with the mayor's office on updates on the reopening phase 2 that started today.
Yep. As of today, we got big permission came late last night. We go into phase 2, which takes into business of our office, real estate, essential, and phase 2 in-store retail, vehicle sales, leasing, rentals, retail, rentals, repair and cleaning, commercial building management, hair salons, and barber shops. So we did get a couple of calls today. I had one from tattoo parlor over here. He was wondering what help we could give him, that he's not getting very much information from the state on when tattoo parlors will be able to open up. So I referred him to Senator Burrell's office, Joe Giglio's office, ESD. I asked if he put his, what's the number they use, business number. ESD on their website, you can put your business number in and it'll tell you when the phases you can open. He said he did that, and he's getting information that it's sometime after phase 4. So I feel for, like he explained to me, that I do one customer an hour, and he says it's a one-on-one. So he said, I don't know why we can't open. So that's. But as for any of the, we really didn't take a bunch of calls today or anything on it. I was at the sports locker before I came here. Tom Reed was in town. We were at the sports locker. They are gearing up. They haven't. They're letting people in the back door right now. They're getting ready to open up, but they're doing all of the things that is necessary. The social distancing signs. They have the barriers up. Shields are come up at their stations, and so it's moving along pretty good. I think from what the hairdressers and the barber shops are going to have to do, I believe it's they have every 14 days that people have to have the coronavirus test, and it's going to be difficult for a while. I think places are going to adapt to it, and right, as long as the public cooperates. I think the chief said they had one incident today at the country fair. People refused to wear their masks inside the store, and so the police were called to ask them to leave. I think barring anything like that, it's going to go. It may go smooth. It's a good thing to get these businesses back opened up, and as long as they go by the rules, and we don't get a spike back in the viruses, then I think it'll go well. And then we'll move into, I think in 2 weeks we can move into phase 3, and then 2 weeks after that we can move into phase 4, which will take in recreation. So we're monitoring that to see. I have Chris Schwery right now calling other places to see what they are going to do and how they're going to monitor. We're still uncertain on the pools this year. We have not uncovered the big pool yet because we're so uncertain on what's going to happen here. We don't want to uncover it and have to start putting chemicals in it and then find out we can't open it. So we're going to wait probably a couple more weeks and see where everything's going, and then we'll make a decision if we're going to open the pools or not this year.
I have a question. When I drive by, and this is at the Y, and I see those kids in the parking lot playing. Now, if they can get together and play, and they're not, they're just playing kickball and stuff, what would be the difference of us having our summer program?
Yeah, I don't know. That's their daycare. We're taking them outside for that. So, I think we'll be able to have some sort of program, and maybe condensed. instead of, I think we do, 8, 9 weeks now. If it's a 4-week program, I think we're going to do it. It's, we need things for every the kids to do. Now, there's so many things that have been canceled, we need things. So we're going to work very hard to have somewhat of a program this year. So.
Hey, Bill, I would imagine, but I don't know if I've heard confirmation yet. Has the STAR program formally been canceled?
I have not heard that yet, but that's, I don't know, John. I haven't heard that yet. So.
All right.
If the schools aren't allowed to open, I imagine, but that's, yeah, we can, I can inquire with Nick Patron.
Okay.
What about the concerts in the park in July? Will they be able to start up again?
Well, we're hoping that, you know, if we get to July and we can have the concerts, you know, we're going to do it. But it may be a matter of social distancing in the park. You know, there's a lot of area there, so you can get, you know, I mean, if you got a husband and wife, they can sit together. Together all the time, but we got enough room for social distance. What we've done right now is we have not, we have basically postponed and told the musicians that have been scheduled that we may try to, as things loosen up, we may try to fit them in. And we may do you know, a concert on a Thursday night and then maybe on a Sunday afternoon or something. So we're going to do our best to get some entertainment, you know, for the people here. So, but right now we've canceled everything through June, and we're holding off on to see what happens in July here.
Hey, Bill.
I was going to say, hey, Bill, what about gyms? I heard you have like a gym in Olean that's kind of fun road is just open.
Yeah, we do. Eats Fitness, and I did receive a complaint on that, so the police department looked into it. They made a report, and it's been, by protocol, it's been sent up to the county.
Okay. And they're still open, like, right now?
As I think so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Want to go?
The other thing, I was talking to
Wanna go?
my friend from the senior and the junior league, and I know they've canceled any bus trips or anything through September. And one of the problems is, if you go to another state, like we were supposed to go on a vacation in Maine, and it's been canceled because they don't want anyone from outside the state coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, you have to be there for 2 weeks in quarantine, which nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of states are doing that right now.
Here's another problem we have with the seniors, is a lot of them look forward to tax preparations over here at the center, and now we haven't opened up yet, so we're getting calls on that. So I'm actually going to bring Terry Shaw back the 15th of this month to start to look at things and put together the plan for opening. We anticipate opening them somewhat in July. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, next week, I think it's starting the 11th. Those of us that deliver Meals on Wheels can start going back.
Okay.
But we have to wear our masks and do what we have to. But I think it comes down to just trying to keep everybody safe.
Yep.
And I just hope, you know, once we get everybody starting to come out, that we don't see our numbers in Carolina County go up. That's the biggest question. The other thing is, I know I've talked to a couple folks, and it depends where you get tested, how long it takes to get it back. So I would encourage people to get it through the county. That seems to be the fastest, the return of the test. But other than that, I just wanted to have an update. So thank you very much.
Patty and I, we were tested at the county site down at the Allegheny Bus Garage on a Thursday. We had our results. They called us on Saturday. Our results. So.
And the other places are taking a few days longer. So that's a big concern.
Linda, I want to communicate something to you, Bill, and I don't know if you're able to maybe look at your resources. I went to the Beef and Barrel a couple nights ago to pick up some dinner, and the McAfee's there communicated that, you know, everyone, of course, all businesses, restaurants are gearing up for phase 3, which I think they anticipate they'll be allowed to start opening. But they said the communication as far as what the guidelines were going to be was very limited. And they said, you know, if you have any resources to reach out, I said, well, have you contacted Senator Borrello's office? I mean, the guidelines are coming from New York State, but they said, you know, they were hoping to be able to get started on whatever preparations they needed to make. And I don't know where else to tell them to go, with the exception of Corello's office.
Temporary state development.
Okay.
But it seems like the state is not putting out they'll put out the last minute.
Right.
And so it's not giving people the direction that they can gear up to. But a lot of it, they belong to the restaurant association of that.
Yeah.
They can reach out to them. But they seem to be on top of what's going on with their so they, that's one way that, they can do there. But the other thing is, like I said, the state's coming out late with these, with all of their guidelines.
Yeah.
And,
Sounds like grant funding.
What's that?
Sounds like grant funding. They tell us last minute, oh, hey, by the way, in 2 weeks, this is what we're offering a grant for, and then we have to scurry and rush. And
But they can, they can reach out to Corello's office, they can reach out to Joe Gilio's office, Empire State Development, that's one of the questions that's always asked on these calls with the governor's office is, when are the guidelines coming out? This John Majuri, who runs the calls, he says as soon as I get them, we'll get them to you. So it's,
It still doesn't make sense to me, though, like why when the last time we were supposed to go to phase 2, they canceled it at like 7:30 at night, and before, like, what the hell are they doing? I don't understand.
I think maybe they're looking at the numbers, and as soon as they just go.
Yeah, but the numbers don't change at 4 o'clock than they do at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
one of the things he pointed out was that
the drinking impulse.
that when they say that you're going to be right now, we're in phase 2. So in 2 weeks, we may be able to go into phase 3. But he says too many people are putting a hard date on that phase 3, and then if the numbers aren't there, the soundbite's been that's today, and then it's not today. And that's what it says. So he said to don't say hard, as he said, as basically politicians, don't tell your constituents that we're going in on this date. It's that we may go on that date. Until the governor approves it, it's not that date. But I guess lately now, as he's sending, the hope here was the information is now being sent off to the international, internationally to look over the numbers and say, okay, here's where you're okay. So
It's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like a man behind the curtain that just comes up with these numbers.
yeah, don't look behind the
Pull
curtain.
them out of thin air, too.
Yeah.
The numbers we just made up now for this thing has never happened.
In the middle of the night,
You
when
don't need them yet.
Yeah.
those
We'll wait
glasses,
another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
just keep drinking wine after dinner, and then it's 10 o'clock at night, and let's make a decision now.
Well, I went for a haircut at 9 a.m. today, and it went seamless. I just had to sit there with a mask on. I was the first one in. So it went seamless, no problems.
Like I told you before, hair is overrated.
So were you the only one there?
No, there was a line.
Okay.
There was
So
a
were
line.
they?
Yeah. No, they were distanced, and people would come in, and rather than have the people sitting there, they would say, all right, we'll take you at 10:30. They were booking into like the afternoon at 9 a.m. this morning. So they're like, you got to come back. Do you want to come back? And people will. So,
All of them.
no, actually, just supercuts.
Yeah. Good. Okay, any more questions on that? Okay, seeing none. The next was discussion of fireworks. And I put this on, I had a gentleman the weekend of Memorial Day. There was some fireworks in his neighborhood, and he was concerned. And he called me, and he said, Linda, I know that they're legal in New York State. He said, but are there any guidelines? Are there any consequences? And, what if my house and my tree catches fire? Who do I talk to? So I told him I would check with Chief Rowley, and he sent me the law on fireworks. I made a copy of it if they wanted. But I thought I would just have Chief Rowley tell you guys what he told me.
Well, I mean, the correct thing to do is if you have a constituent that has a fireworks complaint, have them call the police. If we're not too busy, we'll send somebody down and investigate it. If we're able to catch somebody with fireworks, it's a violation. Typically, we would just take the fireworks. If it's a repeat offender, we would give them a ticket. If it's a violation, violation. They're not going to go to jail. They're probably not even going to pay a fine. And right now, like if we ticket somebody today, it's going to be 3 months before the court date. So that people have to have reasonable expectations of what's going to happen. And it's hard to catch people sometimes. First of all, a lot of times you don't know where they're coming from. And usually the police car pulls up, the fireworks disappear. And you have to find out who the owner is. There's 30 people standing around. Well, normally this year it won't be. But, so it's not easy, and rarely do we make arrests on it. This comes up every year. Usually it's a different alderman each year that has some kind of a complaint. There's not a lot that can be done about it.
It's like the noise ordinance.
It's the noise ordinance, the open fires, the grass in the road, all these quality of life things that are irritating to people, but there's really no happy enforcement. I mean, you hopefully catch him, you ask him not to do it, and for most people that's enough. If you have somebody that doesn't care, is not interested in following the rules, it's difficult to get them to stop.
Do we have a noise ordinance?
Isn't that 10 o'clock?
No.
We have nothing?
Yeah, I had a constituent bring it up, and
Yeah.
We do have a law, but it's very, very hard to enforce.
Yeah, I just told him I would check, and I think that's good advice, just call the police department, have them come and investigate. I think it's just that, peace of mind they get that,
Because he should call when it's happening. He's
Right.
calling you on Monday is not going to fix the problem.
right. Oh, no, he called me when it was happening, because I drove over and I didn't.
But once again, calling you is not going to fix it. He's
Right.
going to call the police.
You can't give me
Everybody likes to call their own, but that ain't going to fix the problem. You got to call the police.
Good. So,
do we have a curfew?
okay, anybody else
Is there a
have any
curfew?
questions about fireworks?
Oh, okay.
Is there a curfew for young people? No? Not for young people?
No.
No.
Okay.
I knew that wasn't, but somebody told me the other night there was like a 10 o'clock curfew, and I don't know.
I thought you said it.
Okay, let's see. Okay, that's.
It was a governor's thing.
Items I had. And, the one thing I just wanted to point out is, I drove around to the protest the other night, and I have to commend, our police chief, our fire chief, and our DPW, and their Aiello for pulling everything together with just a couple hours notice. I think what I saw was our police were there and they were non-confrontational, they weren't suited up for, like a SWAT team, and they talked to people, and I think that made all the difference. I think at any time it could have gone sideways, but you really had control over it, and, I think it says a lot about our community. And I really don't think there were a lot of people from outside that came in, and if they did, there were enough of the people that live here that, obviously they didn't decide to do it. Do you know if there were people from outside?
There were, a lot of my, once again, I just mentioned Kevin, I'm in my office a lot, so I'm not out there, but
Right.
a lot of my guys mentioned that there was quite a few people that they didn't recognize, haven't talked to before.
Yeah.
And then if you notice that there was a contingent of people that were parked in pickup trucks
Yeah.
on North Union, and quite a few of those people, I don't think they're from around here, agitators that came in to intentionally try to confront the protesters, which is something we hadn't really thought about, we didn't anticipate.
Were they locals or where were they from?
I think some were and some weren't.
A lot of them I didn't recognize, but they behaved, they didn't get out of their trucks, 'cause I was there.
Well, it was the first incident that we had was related to a couple of people from all the trucks.
Yeah. But overall, I think it went well, and I think you guys should be commended for a great job.
Well, the general public that showed up for that, they were pretty well behaved. They, we had a pretty good interaction. We heard good things from them that night and have thereafter. So they get some credit as well. They seem to be intentionally there to protest, not to loot or, some of the other things that you're seeing around the country. They were doing it for the right reasons and they behaved themselves. For the most
You know
part.
what I was impressed with? The next morning I drove uptown and there was no garbage.
Well, we didn't have any criminal mischief complaints that night of any kind. We didn't have to arrest anybody. So it went as well as it possibly could have.
Great. Again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Aaron, thank you for that. Everybody was
It
effort.
was, it was a team effort, our law enforcement, fire department, DPW, and we put together a quick pre-plan and worked out very well. But our law enforcement officers have to be commended for keeping their demeanor, and they just did a fantastic job in handling the situation. Chief, hats off to all of the
I do want to let you all know, and maybe you saw it, maybe you So we tried to maintain a minimum presence at the scene. The sheriff, the state police, and the Allegheny police, all, we had cars staged off-site in case we needed them, so I want to thank all of them. And I've personally called them all and thanked them, but it's nice having that, but we kept them back so that the public didn't see a huge police presence. So didn't want to overdo it.
I think Captain Marshfeller did it. I saw the video I wasn't there at that point, but there was a video, I think it was on the Times Herald website, where he basically talked to them up front. I thought the message he gave and, and everything was, it set the tone.
Yeah, he does a real nice job. He's very professional. When you saw that video, that was right before the majority of people got there.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, a lot of folks weren't there for that.
Yeah.
But typically we try to find out who's the leader, set the ground rules, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Different strikes and things that we had over the years, but
From
not the way it did.
from the fire side of it, we had, Chief Richardson was in communication with the District 4 coordinators, as they call them.
Yeah, actually, the deputy, or District 4 coordinator was at our station, the emergency services coordinator was at our station. But like we said, we kept everything, we staff heavier, just in case, because obviously if we did have fires or that type of thing, by the time we got there, due to the amount of people, that it would have really got going at that point, so we did task more staff. We only had one delay in response, and the truck ended up skirting out and around and coming in the back with us, so it went long.
The reason he reached out to the District 4 was, and there again, God forbid, if something happened, that they could cover the different portions of the city. So it was a good team effort.
Yeah. I think here in rural New York State, I think the thing that we are very lucky to have is our mutual aid system in place. And I think it does, as it's proven, it did well the other night, and it's good to know that you're there. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
We have,
I just have one question, different topic, if it's all right.
Sure.
Since summer's coming and a lot of people in the city like to have backyard pit fires, if I start getting complaints about those and smoke-related issues, I think Linda had something on Facebook about there's a code of ordinance that they have to be out by 10 o'clock. Is that enforceable? I mean, who do I call? The police, the fire?
Either or, both of us handle that type of situation. Usually later at night, it gets a little more hairy because now we're kind of, not necessarily, I guess, trespassing into somebody's backyard to investigate a fire. A lot of times people like to have some drinks and things can get kind of difficult once in a while. We do have, we actually printed out pamphlets, so if we do get open burns, we end up handing the pamphlet out that has the whole court ordinances right in it, and then that way they know. A lot of times it's not education. People see a fire and they're like, oh my gosh, there's not all that bonfire or campfires in the city. That's not necessarily true. It's when it becomes a nuisance, and usually it gets to be July and August when it gets humid. We're in a valley, so it holds very tight. You got open windows, and then the wind shifts, and now all of a sudden, now if there's garbage or refuse, those types of things, or wet wood is usually where we see it. People try to throw their grass clippings on there real quick, and that just smokes it very well.
Because when I was a legislator, I used to get complaints and I could get out of it easily, so I'd say, probably all of it. Now if I get any calls, I just wonder if they call.
just have a call dispatch office.
Yeah, just call dispatch.
Okay. Any other questions?
We have, if it's okay, Jeff has a report on the leasing, the enterprise-leasing. He has a number for us.
Okay.
So the mayor and I have been talking to our rep from Enterprise, and he gave me a little bit more information to some of the concerns that people had previously. He watched the presentation, it must be the one that Kevin must have recorded. He said I was pretty much spot on, but there was a couple things I wanted to clarify. And I can't remember which I wanted to ask these questions, but when we're leasing these cars, if at any point they notify us and say we would, now's the time to sell that car, we don't have to give it back. I mean, we can keep that car as long as we want, up until the end of the lease if we choose to do so. They'll notify us as to when they think we're going to get the best trade-in for that car and encourage us to trade it in. We don't have to do that. So that was one of the concerns, one of the main ones that I was unaware of. And then we talked about different vehicles and whatnot. So he gave us the price, and there was one other thing that it's eluding me right now, but it'll come in So to lease 2 brand new Dodge Chargers for this year, it'd be $533 a month per car for a total of $12,798. That's to lease the cars. Then there's the upfit. And you've had a chance probably to look over those numbers that I gave you. I would recommend that we not have them do the upfitting because I don't want to pay them the interest rates on that money. I'd rather just pay for that out of pocket. And, I can try to minimize the upfitting costs as we move forward. We're trying to reuse more equipment, which is, it's a lot of money. There's just no way around it. Oh, and the other thing on the trade-ins. So, as an example, I gave him 2 of my cars that have 100,000 miles on them this year. And he told me he was going to give me a very, very low estimate. They always like to under-promise and over-perform. So anywhere between $7,500 and $10,000 is kind of what he would estimate as a low estimate of what we would get for those 2 cars. When they do that, you can either apply that money directly to the lease to begin with, the next lease, or you can, even if it's during the middle of the lease, apply the funds and it would just lower your monthly costs throughout the purpose of the lease. So I think that was maybe one of the other questions that somebody had. So, we've been kicking this around for probably 3-4 years.
Yeah.
We've had many meetings on it. We've researched it. We've called other departments. We've done just about everything we can do. I don't think we're going to ever be any more comfortable in doing this until we try. So it would be my recommendation we give this a try. For this year, based on, let's say, so we got just shy of 15,000 for 2 cars, and it's almost another, it's like around 20,000 out for 2 cars. So you're looking at $34,000 versus $80,000 for this budget year. So I would ask you, recommend to the council that we try it.
Okay. What we could do is either put it on for,
So what do we do? Is it a resolution we could pass, or?
or what?
I can put a resolution forward for next week.
All right.
And we can look at the whole and then.
Got to secure the funds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just have to go.
So what I'd like to do, so we have a fixed number for enterprise, but I don't have a fixed number for the upfit. So when we do that, we write that up, maybe you can write it up at no more than X amount, and I'll give you, like, worst case scenario, and whatever I don't have to spend, we'll go back to the general fund or wherever.
So you'll plan to budget for the lease expense next year?
Well, basically, if you approve this, then you'd have to take the total lease amount, just for enterprise,
Yeah.
and put that in an account where I can make a monthly payment.
Right.
And then the upfitting, we would need a total upfront, and then whatever I don't have to spend, because like I have a couple light bars I'm going to try to use on new cars, if I can, because they're different kinds of cars, and that will save me a couple $1,000. So I can't give you a firm number until we do the upfitting. And so if you give me X amount of dollars, and allow me to spend no more than that, and then whatever I don't, we'll go back and do whatever fund we put it into.
Yep.
I'll put together a resolution for next week with the information and an idea on how we can fund it.
Okay.
And so keep in mind, like, we'll trade those two cars in. Mark Donahue has been on vacation, so I haven't had a chance to talk to him. So there's, let's say $10,000, that'll come, we can take it right off the top of that, once they sell the cars.
The only thing there is we want to talk to Mark because we may have a couple of vehicles that are slated to be on their way out, and we usually hand the police cars down to other, so we'll see if that's in the workings right now, and we will probably request not to trade them in.
Okay.
So,
And as far as the leasing, it's going to be just for the police department right now.
right now, yes.
Okay. And I feel comfortable about it, and I have been there for those meetings, but also I feel comfortable because the county has been doing this for years, and they seem to be doing well, and I haven't heard any complaints.
And we are getting the county price.
Good.
It's actually through another county, but it's the same pricing that Cattaraugus County is getting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think that's all for public safety. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, I'll call to order committee of the whole for Tuesday, June 2nd. Let the record show that all committee members are present. We have no unfinished business. New referrals for consideration. Discussion item, acquisition of 109 South 2nd Street, brought forward by Mayor Aiello.
opportunity to get 109 South 2nd Street from the county, and here's what the situation is. 109 South 2nd Street is right behind our fire department. And I sent you a whole bunch of pictures today. I have a couple of other pictures here today to show you the relationship to where it's a relationship to the fire department. And
This isn't what we're looking at.
this would by us taking over this house and tearing it down, this would give us, we need parking spaces for number one for the firemen at Station 1. They park right now. They park in the driveway of the ambulance bay, and they have to switch their vehicles around when they come in and that. But not only does it give us that, it will give us a place behind. Number one, it will clean up, help start to clean up that area. And we could fence that in, have a parking lot back there for the firemen and for some additional items that they might want to keep in a fenced-in area. So we have the opportunity. The building has been posted as a dangerous building. Chief, do you have anything you want to contribute to?
No, I think it would be, we've had issues with this house, not only from a code enforcement standpoint, but also from, we've had some significant medical falls down there, or, as far as overdoses and those types of things. And it's just, it's an irreparable condition. We've had multiple, you're probably right now, there's still clothing on the roof, there's garbage on top of the roof out back. The Elks has had to deal with this for quite some time. I think it would be a good idea to get a fenced-in area. We only have so many spots out back except for fire, and we do have 3 trailers that for different operations that can go down there and open that stuff up. And plus, we're right there. We've had vehicles hit where the big semis try to back right around on that first parking spot outside of Station 1, and it alleviate a lot of headaches that we have with our parking and stuff.
So Chief, what would be the cost to, I'm assuming eventually we pave it and fence it? Do you have any idea how the cost?
Not yet, until we made a decision on acquiring and tearing down and stuff like that. We're ready to start monitoring for asbestos and those types of things, and we almost did it as a pre-plan in case it ever did, catch fire. That way we know what to do with the building.
We wanted to gauge your interest first in getting the house from the county, and then we can.
This is something that we could reach out to the county and they would give us.
Yeah, we've had a conversation with Matt Keller already on this, and so we just want to gauge your interest in getting the house from the county, and then we can, when we can secure it, and then after we see where we're going here, we can decide if we're going to tear it down at that point, and then we can work on getting it, the parking lot or whatever out back there.
Off the top of your head, Bill, do you remember, did we put any demolition money in our budget this year?
Yeah, we have
27. We cut it in half. I think $27.
20.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm all for tearing down Blake, so.
Okay.
I have another question. Since this is something that eventually looking forward, the municipality would use, would that give the county more of an interest in maybe using land bank money to take that?
No, the land bank is they're still interested in taking some properties down, but the one grant they have now is more for renovation, revitalization, renovation. So
They've got a percentage they have to follow. They're required to take so many down, but there's for every they have like a 60-40. They can tear down 60, but they still have to rehab 40 of them.
We've got a couple more houses that they're looking at and more than to tear down for us.
But with this is in my ward. Every time I walk the ward, so people that don't live on South 2nd Street or nearby it, they kind of look at South 2nd Street like, oh, it's this scuzzy area of town that nobody likes to live on, but there are actually very nice families that live there. And so when I walk down on South 2nd Street, I get to talk to all the nice residents, and they go, this has been their talking point for like 3 or 4 years, and so you have my full support on tearing it down. I've heard nothing but like horrible stuff about this house. I know when the whole bail reform stuff happened, I know Chief had a problem with this building, and I.
You don't want this to be bought out by some slumlord.
Oh yeah, sure. No, that even the guy next door to it is. I mean, he's spending a lot of time and money rebuilding his house, and I'm sure he would be so glad to have a beautiful house next to a parking lot rather than this. The other thing was I actually drove down South Second today, and I saw, and it was right after I got your emails. I happened to be going that way to the 200 block, and I noticed there was a whole gang of people coming and going out of that house. So I know that a lot of times the county won't evict people until ask them. They'll take possession of a property, but they won't do the evictions or the setting a date when you can buy the house back until they have 15 days from an auction, and they can't set an auction from what I heard. So I don't know if we might have an eviction on our hands.
Well, let's put our interest out there. We'd
Sure.
like to take the house over and then we can work on that.
Sure, of course.
So, we'll move forward with that conversation with the county on this and keep the motion.
Okay, item B is a discussion item, sidewalk capital fund brought forward by Alderman Crawford.
I guess this is just a follow-up conversation on the sidewalk funding and where we stand. I put out a request to audit some of the sidewalk, the contractor that does the sidewalk work for us. That's kind of one angle. I'm interested in getting the documentation to kind of tick and tie things out. So if I could still make that request, I would appreciate that.
We sent you a document today.
Okay.
I think it was about today, Fred, or yesterday?
A couple of days ago.
A couple of days ago.
I feel like it's just like last
I
week.
do have some extra copies here. Anybody get it? You got it? It's actually the history, it's a 9-year history
Okay.
of the program.
Thanks, Phil.
Anybody else?
So
Anybody? I only got 5.
I got one.
we'll take one, yeah. Yeah. So I've rummaged my brain on this whole topic, and I've reached out to Jason and John, and like after last time, the sidewalk program for what we do it for, and the sidewalk like replacement what like we do for violations, I feel should be like 2 expense accounts. Kind of like how code enforcement has an expense account if they write a violation for cleaning your lawn or whatever, or even the DPW department with snow removal, they have a line item where we have money set aside for them to be able to pay vendors to cover the cost of doing the job that the homeowner was supposed to do, and then we bill the homeowner. And then whether we get that money back through rolling it to their taxes or they come in and pay it or whatnot. But I feel like the sidewalk program the sidewalk fund got set up as a capital project outside of our budget realm, and that's why like BWB doesn't see it as they look at it like a capital project. They don't see it as this thing that goes negative and then it goes positive and it goes negative when we're trying to do these programs. And I really just think that we almost should create 2 like line items on our budget. One for sidewalk, penalties or sidewalk replacement for homeowners that need it done, and then another one for the program that the council's trying to do for the homeowner rebate program. And then it kind of keeps everything square, and every year it gets cleared out. And I think that's why year after year we have like a negative rolling balance. Like let's say we go negative $15,000 to pay for somebody else's sidewalks that roll to their taxes, and then that negative expense sits there, and then next year it's 30, and then next year it's 45, and then when we put 40, 50 grand into it, it goes positive, $5,000, and we're like, what happened to all of our money? That's kind of what I've.
Let's have Fred explain this.
Sure.
Okay?
A couple of things.
Fred, why don't you just explain what this document is first? Take us a little bit ahead. I'm going to explain what this document is and then we can.
This goes back to, I believe, Linda, you were mayor, and back in June of 2011, the council at that time decided to address the issue of sidewalk repairs, and they set up a capital account for $150 and took $30,000 out of contingency or wherever, and so that was the start of this program. So I tried to demonstrate where the monies came in, either from our citizens or from county. When we tried to put liens on the property and we made whole in March, and also the contractors, Richard Peck, Wayne Gravel, and where that money, what our expenditures were. So after Tuesday's or last week's meeting, I got together with Bob and the mayor. Bob did some investigating. He found that indeed in that capital account 150, there's about $23,000 worth of citywide sidewalk work done that really the general fund should have paid for, but we've never had a sidewalk repairs account. So I set up a general ledger account called sidewalk repairs, and going forward, next budget, when we talk about budget next year, now we have a line item to fund general citywide sidewalk repairs, and we'll leave capital account 150 open for that program that you initiated, I think, John, where there's parties paid by the homeowner or whatever. So we'll keep capital account 150 just for that program, and repairs made on Wayne Street or wherever, Washington Street, will come out of a general fund line item that you choose to fund next year during budget.
So I've got just a couple questions for you, Fred, that maybe you can clarify. So the $23,000 that hit this capital fund, can you provide some examples what those monies went towards? Are those predominantly on city property? Are those the ADA ramps? Do we have?
One was York, one was over at York Street. Bob identified it, so I'll let him take over as far as where that 23,000 came from. Where?
Yeah, several different locations that were curb ramps, either because CHIPS money couldn't reimburse for it, because you can only spend CHIPS money once every 10 years on a street. Some of it was York Street, a small portion of it that it should have came out of the streets budget. At least that was my intention. The city engineer and I kind of just crossed wires. He was used to putting sidewalk work into that capital fund, so we kind of put a stop to that too. I think that was the previous director directed to him, so we just clarified that. But with several different locations, sidewalks and curb ramps.
And now, are those? All right. So I'm going to give you an example then, and tell me where in the future would it hit. So the city gets a complaint that there is a dangerous sidewalk. The homeowner doesn't comply to the remedy, and so the city orders their contractor to go in and do $1,000 of work to that person's home. We put a lien on the property, and again, if I'm not doing the process correctly, please let me know. All right, we put a lien on the property. Are we always made whole by the county? No. So in that situation, we might have to eat that $1,000. Where would that money hit? This capital fund,
No.
or
Going forward, we'll
Okay.
have at budget time, we'll fund, I think it's line 5110-413. That's a new account called sidewalk repairs. And at budget time,
Okay.
you will decide to put in 20,000,
Okay.
10,000, 30,000, and then when those instances occur, we'll charge it
Okay.
right to that line item.
All right, so in that example, or in the example that Bob has to replace the sidewalks out somewhere that's our whatever. So what you're saying is this fund is only going to be the council appropriates money for this reimbursement program with homeowners going forward, and that's all that hits this.
So actually now, the general fund paid back the capital fund $23,000, so instead of being 14 or 15 in the red, we actually have $7,600
So-
to work with now for
Which-
the program.
That makes a lot more sense than, yeah, okay.
So to clarify that, like, I was very correct in my assumption of where I've been mulling this over for the last couple of weeks. And I like the idea of having the expense account similar to code enforcement, or I don't know what the snow removal, I don't know if that comes out of code's budget or if there's a line item on DPW's, but like when we do snow replacement or, you know, removal, and it's very good having that going forward. If the sidewalk program does be something that we're going to fund every year as well for like the homeowner reimbursement, we might, I don't know if we shift that out of a capital project in, you know, upcoming years, just something to mull over, just so it's something like trees or demolition fund, you know, like we have a demolition capital fund, so we have it there as a piggy bank, but if every year we want to give homeowners $15,000 or $30,000 to use towards it, it's something that's there that we can budget for if it's a more permanent program. But
What you would probably do is you would pass a resolution, like we have in prior years, to move money out of, from contingency into that capital.
right.
So now where we stand now, did we, at our last meeting, did we move funds into that account at that time?
No, we wanted to talk about it.
Okay.
It was what, 20,000?
So yeah, exactly, Jason. What we talked about was the possibility of moving some funds. So I'm glad to see that at least the fund remaining balance here in this account, 7,600, is kind of in line with what my understanding was going to be. So that makes sense. Now I guess I asked the council and the mayor, does it make sense to provide some funding? I'm assuming we've encumbered or rolled over now into our general fund, the surplus, or not yet?
We don't do that yet. We have a list of encumbrances, and BWB, as part of their audit, approves those encumbrances. They want to see the backup
Okay.
documentation, so that's something that won't happen for a couple of months.
Oh, we don't roll anything over for a couple, it takes a couple months to close out?
Yeah, well, we're officially into the 2020, 2021 budget.
Right.
So if you were to want to use $20,000 to refund or to put in this account, it would either come from contingency or fund balance.
Well, I guess when I think of the fund balance, the last thing I thought of is that fund balance should have gotten propped up by 300,000 or whatever was the last number. Has that happened yet, or? No.
It officially won't happen until BWB does their audit.
But it's also not a bank account.
But you can look at the Fred report for the end of this year. That'll give you a good idea what's going to be added to the
I think last week I reported just an estimate, again, unaudited, of a healthy addition to the surplus, maybe $500,000.
Right. And if that's the case, I guess I know before that 500,000 goes into the fund balance, we were sitting right at 15%
Yeah.
criteria, which means we have to maintain 15% fund balance, right?
Yeah.
So,
Only because we took some back.
correct, right? But if we can make decisions based on that we have a $500,000 extra now in that fund balance, okay, then we shouldn't be sitting right at 15%. So could we move 17,000 out of fund balance into this to put this balance at 25,000 so we can allow homeowners to take advantage of the sidewalk program? That's my question.
I think we could, yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
Does that make sense? So what I'm suggesting is we move 17,392 out of our general fund balance into this account, which will give us $25,000, so we can try to help support our homeowners with more sidewalk improvement programs around the city. It was very successful last year, and at least now we know whatever's put into this account goes directly to homeowners, and they can, you know, if that's okay with Bill, because I mean, Bill and Bob, you guys have to essentially ramp up the coordination with your offices and the engineer's offices. Are there any issues if we move forward on that proposal?
Not monetarily, but maybe logistics wise, just talking about some really minor changes that could follow the bill, but, you know, looking at if we spent X amount and the citizens have ever spent maybe like 25% of what we did, maybe 50-50 split is more fair.
Okay.
I know a contractor was doing it for about $8 a square foot, and we would reimburse 6%, so, or $6 of that, so we would get farther along with less money, but maybe just a 50-50 split.
So maybe instead of
We still had a maximum on there, right?
Yeah.
Another 1,000, yeah.
Because I think we,
then maybe what is the current $6 a square foot we reimburse?
Yeah.
Then maybe we go to $4 a square foot.
because I thought the idea was to cut our city contractor in half. So this would entice like homeowners to, if they did it themselves, they could make even more money back.
Yeah.
But if they didn't want to do it, like I believe Alderman Anastasia said, like he didn't do it, he just told the city to take care of it, and he split the cost with the city up to $1,000 of the city's contractor.
I mean, that's the catch, right, Bob? Like, what is our city contractor cost?
Around 14.
So then we reimburse $6 a square foot.
Still
It's,
less than half.
you know what I mean? It's,
Right.
maybe I'll follow up and before a resolution comes forward, I'll follow up with you, Bill. We can talk about it. But if the consensus is with the council that they would be interested in trying to move this forward, obviously we're into June already. It would be, I think, and let's face it, a lot of people are working on their homes right now. I think this would be a great, you know, push for people to continue improving our neighborhoods. So there's a lot of horrible sidewalks out there still. So
Good luck getting pressure treated wood right now.
I'll put something together. I'll talk with Bill and then maybe get something on for next week. Paul, does that work for you?
Yep, sounds great.
All right, thank you. I'll follow up with you offline. So.
Okay, item C is a discussion item forward by Alderman Dougherty on open container law.
So, I wanted to put forth a resolution in the midst of COVID-19 of altering Chapter 14. When Phase 3 happens and into Phase 4 and 5, until we're officially done with phases, a lot of businesses are going to have social distancing requirement, have capacity requirements, things like that. Right now in the city code, we have the ability for the people to get an exemption from the council for a waiver to allow them to use off-premises areas that are adjoining their properties to use for consuming or purchasing of alcohol or alcoholic beverages. There's a lot of issues with like New York State Liquor Authority, where like you rent a spot from technically the Liquor Authority doesn't view like a Sidewalk Cafe as a place where you can consume alcoholic beverages, even though it's on the property of the place. It's not something that is completely controlled by the business owner. So that and maybe a vacant lot that is rented next to an establishment or what have you. So if I'd like to put forth a resolution that we allow the council to do a blanket waiver to that the open container law to places that are already licensed through New York State Liquor Authority to allow them to consume alcoholic beverages off-site to adjoining premises. Obviously, like if they can't just send people out to a Sidewalk Cafe they haven't paid for a permit for, or they can't send them over to a neighbor's property if they don't have permission. But this allows us to give them a blanket waiver so that they can increase their occupancy, so everyone can stay social distancing and be able to use a Sidewalk Cafe, so they can increase their capacity so that they can continue to stay afloat. Because if a lot of the business models of these places that have the same staff but now have half the amount of customers in there, it's very difficult to try to keep their businesses open. Right now, I mean, obviously it's terrible to keep their businesses open when they can't be open. But once this all starts to ease in, I think this gives them a better fighting chance to stay afloat and things like that.
Kevin,
Yeah.
so what would be the difference, like say, you could go, when you sit out front of the table, you can have alcohol out there?
Not supposed to have alcohol.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had pina colada.
They cracked down on the, I believe it was the state liquor board.
Oh.
Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, so the first year, I think they did it, and then the second year, they did crack down on the liquor board. And the issue was, with beef and barrel in general, was that you have to be able to license or have permission to use the public space, and we don't have a mechanism, well, we actually do have a mechanism in the code that will allow them to utilize the public space. So they could go back to the liquor board, and get that into their license if we grant permission across the right of way to do that. Because how they were doing it is they were setting them out on the bump out.
Yeah.
And you had to cross over the city sidewalk. And that city sidewalk is not licensable unless we say that it's licensable. That's essentially how it.
So when was it illegal for them to do that? Did this just happen, or?
It would have happened last, well, it's always been the law.
Okay.
Last year, the liquor board, somebody reported that they did that.
All right.
Halfway through the summer, we no longer sat outside. They said that the city cracked down on them.
So
To further this discussion, Nick and I have been working with the Chamber of Commerce and Olean Business Development on putting a survey together to put out to all of our restaurants and businesses to see if they would be interested in increasing their space outdoors. And so we're trying to get a gauge on how many would be interested. Then we'll be looking to come to you with possible changes in our laws if we have to.
Why would we need to do that? Why wouldn't we just do, I mean, like what, if there's not enough interest, you're saying we wouldn't do this?
Well, if there's not enough interest, why would we change all the laws?
Well,
Or change what has to be changed. And we got our licensing. Some people may not want to deal with this because of the ABC board licensing issue. But it's something that we put together, trying to gauge an interest, and then we can work on that once we see what the interest is.
I don't know, I think by the time we get done with that, the key is that we need to do this now, don't we? I mean,
Right.
like in the next couple of weeks.
before phase 3
That's
hits.
when restaurants are gonna be opening and struggling, and if we sit and wait for, you know.
Plus, this offers them a blanket waiver.
Calls back, like, I don't know, whatever, like.
So what we do carries into what the liquor board
Yeah,
controls
correct.
on their
We're giving them permission. Now, if they don't want to go to the liquor board and say, hey, if they don't utilize this, they don't have to. But if they want to, they can. So the people that say no to the survey or say yes to the survey, this is in their court.
Or if the liquor authority chooses not to enforce that, provision of the license because of what's been going on with COVID, there's been some talk with the higher levels that they may do that. But this would, you either go back to the liquor board and ask for permission, or, as some proprietors may just choose to if the city gives them permission, they'll take your risk on their own with the liquor board.
Yeah.
But I can see the state and the liquor changing it just because of what the situation we're in.
I would hope that they would be cognizant of that
Yeah.
need and take a look at it, sure. I would hope that they would.
Yeah, but
That would give the city the jump start.
I wouldn't hold my breath either, like, if you pick whatever,
Yeah.
But it's revenue.
I guess, so,
yeah.
I guess I don't understand the waiver concept. I mean, is this, essentially we have that in place right now.
Where each and every one of us to come to us
But
to
everyone
ask
has
us.
to come to us. This would just automatically enroll everyone?
Anybody who has an establishment through the liquor authority with a license would be able to use this blanket waiver to take to the liquor board to adjust their liquor or their licensed establishment for rented adjoining properties, whether it was the city sidewalk, like the Sidewalk Cafe, or maybe there's a place, a small half lot next door, or whatever they were renting. It would allow them to.
Do they rent the sidewalk?
They don't. They technically own the sidewalk. But we have most property owners own up past the curb where it abuts the street. In essence, in layman terms, they rent the city the sidewalk and the subway and all that other stuff, and as most property owners, they have to maintain it. And we have exclusive right to it at zero cost a year. That's
okay. So I just a really basic example. Does this clear up the issue that, like, if if somebody's in a bar having a drink and they want to go out in front of the bar or the restaurant to have a smoke or take a phone call, does this allow that person to step outside the doors with their drink and do that?
correct.
Is that what this would do?
It would also enable them to buy a drink in the bar, and if they're uncomfortable with the crowd capacity inside the bar, to go outside and have their drink outside and socially distance. Yes, that's.
Does it allow them to walk all the way down the street with that drink?
That is something that the council could do or not do, right? So the council could, because the way that our current code is set up, the council can grant let's say, if, I don't want to put this out there as an example, that's an easy one, strolling.
Right.
Let's say that the council wanted to make strolling events open container friendly, and that you can travel from premises to premises with a drink, you could specifically grant permission for strolling. It wouldn't have to be every weekend, every Friday. You could choose to do that. The council has the ability to go through the process of changing what the open container rules are without having to actually change the law. And that's the way our code is set up. And it took some, no one hasn't really looked at the code on open container in a while, because it doesn't really, it's one of those things we see 2 or 3 prosecutions a year on. But you guys have the ability to, for example, if you were to, a neighborhood wanted to do a block party in the street, they can come to the council and ask the council, can we serve, we have a beer truck come and serve us beer at a block party on a public street. You can do that. You can come to the council.
And I don't think we've ever given a waiver to St. Mary's.
That's not a public. Well,
It is a public street, yeah. And then, the St. Stephen's Club in the Plant used to do it every year.
I mean, I'm not proposing, I don't, without obviously talking to the police chief and the mayor, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, I don't know if it makes sense to go, nor am I suggesting it makes sense to go, be able to walk all over town with an open container, but it just always seemed asinine to me that, if you got a phone call, you can't just go out in front of the establishment that you bought the drink at and stand out there and take the phone call or whatever. I guess. So I think it is worth looking into and pursuing. That's my 2 cents.
We could also do it by corridor too, right? Like it could be within, like if you wanted to say on North Union Street. Is that right, Nick? Sure.
However you guys design the parameters.
I would keep the caveat to also include any premises that has a licensed establishment, because if you do North Union Street, you also miss, like somebody wants to step out and do social distancing at third base, or, the press box has almost no frontage. You step out that door, you're essentially on the sidewalk.
So can somebody buy a drink at Witte Barrel, have them take their drink over to the farmer's market and just hang out there?
They could. I assume it would be on them that they've left and gone into that, on North Union Street. If you did the North Union Street, if you did it how I proposed it, where it's just licensed businesses, they walk through that gray area. Sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering why nobody asked me on this. I'm assuming that they didn't like what I was going to say. I don't like this idea at all, because you're not considering the enforcement aspect of it. You could license business A to do as John proposed, but everybody's going to start drinking open containers everywhere, and there's going to be broken glass and garbage and crap. There's a reason that this law has been there for forever, because it's not a good idea to just allow people to drink. The officer's going to stop somebody and say, I bought this at so-and-so's place. How am I going to know the difference? It's not closed. We're going to walk down the street. The guy who goes to 7-Eleven at 8 in the morning and gets his 12-pack of beer and fills his pockets and drinks, and going to throw them on everybody's lawn.
But I don't think that's,
but that's
Well, no, but when, as soon as you start loosening this, everybody's gonna consider it's open container. When St. Mary's has their deal, it's all fenced in, right? You can't leave this perimeter. Are we gonna not have that perimeter anymore? Enforcement is gonna be a nightmare for this. So if you wanna do this, great. But when you come to me and say, hey, we've got a problem with all this stuff,
But it's a
I'm gonna
violation.
say, nope.
Is it a conviction violation?
I don't even, nobody even told me about this. I didn't look into it. This is the first I heard of it. Don't know anything about it. But the enforcement aspect of it is going to be very difficult.
So is open
To
container
John's
violation-
point, right now, if you're at, I don't know, Raven Rock, you know, when you walk outside and it's a cigarette or on the phone, nobody's going to bother you. We don't, you know, typically that happens all the time now, and the cops are not bothering people doing it. But if we see somebody walking down the street and they're nowhere near a bar and they have an open container, yeah, we're going to stop that person, ID and check them. Usually you're going to say, hey, you're not supposed to have that, and they can pour it out. We don't make a lot of arrests for that. But once you start legalizing it, then it's, at the very least, you should consider putting some restrictions on geographically, like to Nick's point, for strolling it. You could say from State and Union to Whitney Avenue, from this hour to this hour, this is where you can have it. So if we find somebody on Clinton Street,
Right.
it's not, but to just start, you gotta really think about the enforcement aspect of it. In theory, I'm just, as a police officer, I'm just against this idea. However, I understand the business aspect of it, the businesses are hurting, and I like drinking as much as the next guy. So yeah, I'd like some of this as well. But all I'm suggesting is think about the enforcement aspect of it. Because after you do this, and you're coming back to me with complaints, I'm gonna say, hey, I warned you that it was gonna be a problem.
So, 2 cents I'd like to add is, I mean, listening to you guys talk is, if you want to do an ordinance to this effect, I think you should make it so that they stay on their own property. They don't have the liberty. I would be against the industry to have an open container myself. I don't care if you stroll in or not. If you want to buy a big drink at Beef and Barrel, you sit in front of Beef and Barrel on the sidewalk and drink it before you go walk someplace else. I think it's a bad example for young kids, for example, or whatever. But also down in, I'm not going to mention establishment, but there's one place that when she did her map to open her bar and get her liquor license, she forgot to add the front porch of her establishment. So according to the liquor authority, she's not allowed to have liquor on her front porch because it's not included in her map that she sent to the state. And she, over the years, has been getting $1,000 fines if the ABC board comes down and catches somebody drinking on their front porch because it's not in their map. So I don't know if this would help that person out or not.
Well, the liquor board obviously controls all of that. We don't make a lot of arrests for that kind of thing. Typically, if we have a problem with the bar, we'll report it to the liquor board. You know, we don't typically make arrests for that. And we make, to Nick's point, we make very few open container arrests. But most everybody knows you don't walk down the street with a beer or a glass. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying think about the enforcement aspect of it. There has to be some kind of definable rules that will allow the officers to make arrests without a lot of hassle.
And you also don't have to put a time limit on it. You could say that this ends in October or whenever you guys determine. The purpose of what you're trying to do is to accommodate occupancy load issues for establishments.
Right. So I know the establishment you're referring to. So because there was another establishment on North Union Street that had an issue with their back patio, and what the normal proper thing to do is, and especially like let's say this thing goes through, you'd get this in your plate and say, hey, listen, I've got a waiver. You send it with a modified map to the liquor board. You can still operate within the parameters of your original map, and then they send you the approval and say, you're good to go. You can use your front porch. You can use your back patio, or now you can use your sidewalk cafe, or a little alleyway strip along the side of your building, or what have you, wherever is convenient depending on your building's layout, and they modify it based on your waivers or based on your map adjustments. Hey, I own this front porch. And so she should have gone to the liquor board years ago and actually just sent in the modification. A lot of people don't know. They're like 35-page documents. I've read them. And
as long as they stay on their own property and break out there if it's inside or outside, as long as they're on their own property,
Sure.
I'd be against having somebody walk down Union Street drinking drinks, you know.
See, I think that would be hard to enforce though, than just, it's almost like you have to open it up or not, right? How do you say, like, I don't know, say somebody wants to stand out in front of the Beef and Barrel and have a drink right at the sidewalk. They start wandering over to where, whatever, the Southern Tier Healthcare or whatever, now they gotta, no, move back over here. Like, I don't know, it's almost like, it's either keep the way it is or open it up.
And I can see, and this might go along with what the chief just said, I can see some issues with it. I'd say, a gentleman, someone buys a drink, they go out, and then they see a friend that's underage. What's to stop that person from giving that person a drink? It's still in the zone. I mean, I just see a lot of people stretching it.
That's how the liquor authority actually gets people. They bring in an underage person and an adult. The adult buys the beer, walks out to a patio that might be on the floor plan, and I think that's how in Allegheny, the brick house or whatever was hit a few years ago. When he just handed it to his compatriot. Didn't even have to take a sip of it. As soon as he handed it to him, he started writing his report, and they got fined big time. So, I mean, because you're supposed to be...
I see some people taking advantage.
You're in, and that's why you don't have to sign up for that. You don't have to sign up. You can tell your customers you're not allowed to go on our sidewalk cafe, you're not allowed to go to our back patio, because we don't have the staff to constantly monitor you, because that's what you sign up for when you get licensed with the liquor authority. You are saying that I am 100% within these confines and yada yada. So.
I can see where.
What does the mayor think?
Well, it would be nice to have more outside seating. I think you could accomplish that. But my understanding is that if you have your outside seating, then you have to have a barrier, and that's why you see in a lot of communities they'll have either a small fence or that there. I think there's room on our sidewalks, especially along North Union. But if we do it for North Union, and you can get the West States people, saying we want it too. But I think it's something that should be looked into further. I think we can, and that's why we're doing a survey to see who is interested. And then you've got a place like I think like the bistro down here. You got all that area out front there, but it's not connected to his building. So can we somehow, move the beacon barrier? Is it safe that we need Bob to take a look thing, so have the sidewalk swing out around? And, so I think it has a lot of merit. But there again, the chief is right. It all comes down to how is it going to be enforced and what is going to be enforced. And I think the last thing we want to do is have a bunch of rowdies walking down North Union Street with drinks, and we've got broken glass, causing broken windows, and so we need to really, we want to help out our businesses, but we have to be real, really have to think this out and think what is the best way to go.
We could regulate, like no glass, right? You'd say plastic cups or cans.
If they step foot off the premises,
right.
Or if they're off the because if they walk out to a sidewalk cafe, if John's with his wife having a drink and a steak at the Beef and Barrel, like they're not going to put you in a red Solo cup because that just doesn't meet the ambiance of what they're trying to create over there. But as soon as they say, hey, we're going to go to the next place to sample something, and they request a to-go cup and go on their way. No,
Then you're going off the premises.
if it depends on what you guys are doing. If we're doing North Union Street and West State, or North Union, or just the premises, then obviously that he shouldn't be walking off the premises at all with glass, Solo cup, whatever they're providing.
Okay. Anything else?
Nick, is there, when we think about changing laws or things like this, been in place for a long time, is there documentation of why it was originally done in the first place? Like, do we have a narrative that goes along, or is it just like whatever was recorded during the
I
council
could
session?
address that. I was on the police department when this open container law was back, and that's a city ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of the people walking the streets drinking beer or drinking drinks, alcohol, and the trouble it caused and that there. So we just wanted the council back then wanted to clean up things and make it illegal for you to walk around in public with an open container.
That wasn't during Prohibition.
No. Just after.
To your point though too, Bill, about the whole barrier thing, you can't also in the sidewalk cafe ordinance, you can't have a sidewalk cafe without a barrier either. So hence, like the Beef and Barrel, I think when they first did it too, they didn't have any, they have the chains and the bollards now. I don't know if they've got removed, if they're still there. I mean, I've got it at my coffee shop and they don't have, we don't serve alcohol, but I had to, in order to have the sidewalk cafe, I had to put parking bollards in. So.
But yeah, that was, I mean, that you're going back to, I want to say in the 80s when that was put in. And there was not only there, but at all your softball leagues and that, they get a waiver for during the time of the playing ball. They get a waiver for alcohol in the parks. That's part of the application they put in. They had a release, but it was put in there to try to curb all of the drinking all over the place.
So the people like get rowdy or trash or both?
It was a lot of the on this, the trash on the street.
Never
There's
approved
no
those.
mechanic as a police officer, you saw somebody walking down the street with alcohol and they were getting somewhat rowdy. There was no mechanic to confront them and say, so the law was put in, now you can confront them. You can't walk down the street without them detaining.
Disturbing the peace.
A lot of things
littering.
around the city.
But usually, I mean, the other thing too is if somebody's walking down the street being peaceful with an open solo cup or whatever, you know what I mean? The cops normally wouldn't stop that person if they were walking down the street, not being rowdy. If there was a group of people gathering at a roundabout, let's say, and they're being rowdy, like you have other mechanisms to,
I mean, let me just clarify my statement. I'm not suggesting that you don't do this.
Right.
I'm just saying think of the enforcement
Sure.
aspect. Or to Paul's point, either make it open, free open container or not.
Right.
Don't make it in such a form that's going to make me impossible to enforce. When you get complaints, and you're going to be coming to me, and I'm going to say,
Sure.
You gotta think of how you're going to do it very carefully.
Sure.
If you decide to do it.
Like every other city footprint is a liquored authority, so they're walking in those gray areas. I hear you.
It's going to require some thought.
Yeah.
You rent a pavilion at Waterman's Park, and you want to have alcohol at your function, you get a waiver that's issued by the city. Or it's an automatic, I think it's when you apply, you need an open container waiver, it's a $15 fee, and you get the waiver.
Sure.
And that was put in a long time ago, that was put in by the council, that was authorized to do that.
Sure, and obviously it has been looked at a while because like us reviewing this to come up with an idea, like the council needs to approve every single one of those waivers, and I don't think I've seen one in 4 years that I've been on the council. So.
Way back when.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It was automatically issued as long as you put in for the waiver and you paid your $15.
Gotcha.
So how do we get to the point where we can wait, like, just for example, I don't remember who said this, but how do we get to the point where we can say, okay, Strolling is Friday night, open container law is off the table from 5 to midnight, or whatever it is? Like, how do we get there? So you keep your drink at Beef and Barrel, you walk around with your whatever.
So you don't have a 9 o'clock in the morning?
How do we get there?
Yeah. So the other question, Paul, is what if someone is coming to stroll and holding on? They park behind a Beef and Barrel, they don't go to any restaurant, but they have a six-pack and they come and they walk around with a can of beer. Are they covered? Or is that something different? I mean, is it just the alcohol out of the establishment, or anyone can bring a six-pack down town and crack it?
I mean, I don't know, would that be bad?
I'm just saying, is that, are they covered too, if they bring their own?
Covered from,
From being in trouble walking on the street?
well, yeah, I think they would, would be.
I mean, to Paul's suggestion about strolling, just, we're all happy with strolling, benefit from it. Anybody that shows up, they don't want to go into the beef's price and bring their six-pack, they're going to be allowed to do that, I would think.
Yeah,
And there again, that's where the enforcement part gets tricky. If you don't allow enforcement,
is that
great.
how we, respectfully, I mean, that's a pretty
Well,
big stretch in the
But
But-
you're going, and I'm going under the assumption that everybody's law-abiding citizen and they're not gonna get drunk and they're not gonna get in a fight with a girl trying or another guy. Just because they
They're
want to come home.
they're gonna do that in Talkies anyway, right? Like,
Well, that's how, because I'm talking about stroll.
well, but that's open during stroll only. I don't know.
So we're-
And, but still, yeah. So if somebody grabs a margarita from the El Mariachis or and then walks over and goes to a vendor and buys a pork sandwich and then goes and then peruses dresses that are out front for his daughter or whatever, like that's and then maybe he's got a buddy with him that just happened to bring a 6-pack. Like if they're causing a ruckus, it's the same as the sober people that were here 2 days ago. If they got rowdy and violent, like there's, you know what I mean? Someone will call in a complaint like, hey, this guy's harassing us on the street. They call the police department. The police department comes down and maybe they don't get him on an open container. Because our goal is not to have shotgun methods to harass our citizens, but no, you're drunk and disorderly. You are disturbing the peace, and you're littering. You're harassing these people. Like there's a numerous amount of things that we could get them on if they're getting out of control. I mean, but.
No, my question was, what's the difference between buying a drink at an establishment and bringing your own? Are they both
They're
covered?
buying. I doubt they're going to another state to buy their drinks. I mean, they're buying them with their community.
Why is that relevant? Like, we want to encourage people to come to Strolian and to be able to walk and enjoy it in a more open and, I don't know, whatever, free way. Like, who cares where they buy the drink? I mean, most people are going to buy it from the establishment there. They're going to go to Beauty Whiskey. They're going to go to Beef and Barrel or whatever, the Village Green. But, I don't know.
And then
Are they have a vendor on North Beach Street selling alcohol?
if they have a license for it, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Mike.
I mean, what's that?
No, I said they.
Well, yeah, I mean, but
My other thought
it's
was.
not to be Bourbon Street, and if it was, we'd be lucky. I mean, they'd make a lot of money.
I don't think they have.
My other thought is my parents raised me that in a very European style household. My parents went to Europe quite a bit before I was born, and so like if we wanted a glass of wine with dinner, we got it, and it wasn't this, like, hey man, we're 16 years old, let's drink under the bridge and hope we don't get caught. Like that wasn't what we got into when we were, we were taught to respect it. And now you see people walking up and down the street with Monster energy drinks, and that stuff is 10 times worse than an alcoholic beverage. And I see Monster energy cans all over the place. And any place that I have to mow a lawn somewhere, if it's one of my rental properties, I see those stupid cans everywhere, and those things are horrible for you. And it's one of those things that, like, if somebody's going to be conscientious and they happen to be drinking a PBR or a Monster energy drink and they're walking up and down the street and they're not bothering anybody,
I know, just my personal opinion, I think you're opening up a can of worms, and I think you should follow the chief's recommendation, especially with this type of situation. And the mayor, being a retired police officer, I think we ought to get input from both of these two gentlemen before we just shotgun and pass a resolution. Because I think there's a lot of liability issues, and potential problems with this.
There is. I know just personally, I mean, I don't go out to places to drink much anymore, but you get this feeling of being confined and the state closing down on you when you can't walk out the door of a place to have a drink. Or walk up the street to another place where somebody's at that you just want to have a chat with. So I would enjoy to have that freedom. I think there's a lot of people that would, as long as we cannot bring back whatever we were moving for in the first place. So, if we can do it so that people aren't just tossing trash on the side of our sidewalks and being too disorderly, more so than usual, then I'd like to see something happen.
I tend to be more, I guess, in the middle of the road. I think there is within 20 feet of the establishment that you purchase it at. I don't see any reason why you should be able, if a bar on Union Street has a band playing and you want to go stand out on the sidewalk, it's too hot or too packed inside. I don't see that as being a major problem, right? That you should be able to do that. There are relevant concerns about just the free walking up and down Union Street with open containers. I can see the concerns there. But I think it would be a huge improvement just to be able to go and, I know some bars, I've been at Union Whiskey before, and, there's a band and you're going outside and they stop you at the door. They're like, no, you can't take your drink outside. I think that infringes on what we're trying to accomplish by getting people on Union Street, by getting people downtown, and maybe if we look to release some of the restrictions, not all the restrictions. That's my 2 cents. So like I think Dave kind of said, if it's going on, you're sitting at the cafe that's attached to the restaurant, you're drinking the drink right there, that, I don't see any problem with that.
And to your point, John, there's also a time, okay, so strolling in is one issue, right? That whole thing. But there's a time-sensitive issue to this too, right? Like, if we, we could do nothing and let businesses open, restaurants open, and they're going to struggle with COVID-related occupancy issues, right? They're going to be sitting there at 50% capacity, and or we can give them this option to be able to expand their footprint legally and be able to serve more customers, right? Like this is now, this is not next year.
This is, yeah, good.
Or have I misunderstood?
This is to help people now. We could make this out to be like the landlord registration law. That's why I took a baby step and didn't say let's open it up worldwide, and just let everybody wander around the whole city. I took a baby step and to allow the businesses to do it, so we can get them some relief as soon as phase 3 is ready to go. And otherwise, we could be talking about this for 6 months, and COVID's over, and they're at full capacity, and the ones that survived, and the ones that died.
I'm on board for immediate action if we can find to the front edge or, adjacent property. I think we can do that safely right now.
Yep, I agree.
Ron?
No, you gotta set it up, just like you said. We establish it at home. You can't have them wander the street. I used to wander the street for all years. We didn't have it up at the Decatur wall when I was a kid. Let me tell you, it was a mess.
That's a good point.
Wait a minute, what did you say about prohibition or
But that was You did say the 1980s is when they established this, right?
80?
Well, the open container was the 1980s when they established
I think
that.
it was in the
Because in 1982, New York State pushed the 21 drinking age law too.
What?
1982.
Wait, so open container laws are in the 80s? That's when they came about?
That's what Bill remembers it being an ordinance.
21 drinker law.
And it was probably something that passed down from the state, and it's like, you want to, kind of like now, do you want to accept or decline what the state is telling you? And if we accept it, then that, it just becomes part of our code.
I think it was initiated with the council back then.
Okay.
But I give you kudos, Kevin. I think the council would benefit from looking at codes and things that we've taken as.
I never realized why we didn't have the outside dining.
Right.
You want my opinion in the city?
Yeah.
We're backwards.
A lot of it.
We are. I didn't realize that. I sit here and why don't we have outside dining? It's our ordinance. We have to loosen up a little bit.
Amen.
We have to, I guess we got blinders on, and this is the start.
People are afraid to change.
Yeah.
And that's true, that's not just the city of Olean, right? Everywhere.
No, it is. I know.
Restaurant is mired with, it's the way we've always done it, and that's why we.
That's
do it
what
this
the
way.
point is.
And nobody follows the.
Hey, if it fails, we got problems, we can change it, yeah. Right? You got a hammer? A mallet? Where is it? Where is it? You can always change it.
Glad I called that wrong.
Thank you.
So, I'm looking forward to put forward a resolution here upcoming as soon as I can get one across. So if I have your support, great. If I don't,
You got my support.
I'm gonna pull a Crawford. I'm just gonna put forward it. And if I have your support, I do. And if I don't,
We put some riders on that too. I needed to play that. Perfect.
If you leave it just for the individual establishment, you got my support. If you're going to have it so they can roam and John Q. Public Street everywhere. I support it.
Yeah, I'm fine with just the establishment.
Is
And I
it,
think you're gonna find out all of them.
do you see a problem with that? Just allowing within the establishment's frontage?
I think in discussions with the mayor and with the various groups, I mean, that's what the feedback that we're looking from. So would they utilize the space out in front? Would they utilize parking spaces if we made those available? Would they utilize the bump outs if we made those available? And we limit it to that. You know, you write your law and limit it to that, and you make it it's still we don't have to write the law, we just have to write the waiver, actually. Sorry, I was quoting there. But then the chief still has his enforcement rules. I mean, if you see somebody walking up the street from, let's say, Union Whiskey down to Tully's, with a beer in their hand, they're violating the open container law.
Right.
If they're out in front, they're not.
Would this be something they have to actually apply this waiver on an annual basis, or it's just a blanket that covers that?
It would blanket cover them, and then they would go to, the proper channel would be, they would take this waiver and send it with a modified plan to the liquor board to adjust it.
Okay.
If they didn't send it in, like Nick said earlier, they just kind of, it takes you chances, I think is what Popeye says.
Or you get your license revised to include all the sidewalks and let's say the bump out.
Okay.
The council should still, at the end of the year, or the summer, they didn't like the way that it went, yank it.
Okay.
And even if they have it on their license, it doesn't matter, because you yanked it. So they have to have both components for it to be absolutely.
But I think, didn't you also say that this could be a seasonal thing too?
Well, yeah, that's what I meant by it. They can set a time period for it to expire automatically in October or November, or make it consistent with your cafe law, which is from May 1st to October 31st.
April 1st.
April 1st to October 31st.
I like that idea.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Line right up to that, and
Yeah.
it's no brainer. I also think it's important to think about, so there's a lot of existing businesses that could make use of this, but you never know what kind of business models or people this might attract, who might inspire them to want to, you know what I mean?
There's still a lot of vacant places on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we don't want more. We don't want more vacant places.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We want more business.
We want more business. We don't want more vacant places. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I'll get that drafted up.
Okay, so are we good with that for now? You want to, Kevin, you know what you're doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Does that give us any freedom with strolling with the way we're talking about doing it, or does anybody currently sell alcohol during the strolling events?
Oh yeah.
There's no waiver issue during strolling. They tell the businesses who are selling the alcohol that they go by their license.
Okay.
Okay, last discussion item, brought forward by Alderman Dougherty, this should be a gem, keeping fowl in the city. Kevin.
Keeping fowl. Oh, I like the title on that one.
That's technically how it's worded in the code.
Okay.
So
Cool.
the record show that it is F-O-W-L, not F-O-U-L.
Yeah. Because I'm still in the city. So there's a lot of people that I've been talking to recently that want to get chickens in the city, and I've actually spoken to code enforcement. Normally they get one inquiry per year on keeping chickens in the city, and now they're up to 14 since COVID started. 14 inquiries on what are the rules and requirements. That's not saying that there's people out there that just aren't calling, they're just going to get chickens at Tractor Supply and having chickens at their house. Actually I could probably count out like 15 houses within a 3-block radius of my house that has chickens. And none of the neighbors have a problem with it because our codes are all complaint-based. The problem is that reading the code on chickens is you have to keep the chickens within 50 feet of a property line. I don't know too many properties in the city that are 100 by 100 with the chickens in the dead center of it. Nate Smith. One of the few properties, but the average property is about 50 by 80, I believe. 50 by 100. So that means the chickens are violating on the width but have the length. And it's only the coop, so that you can have the chickens within certain distances. The other caveat in the law, I believe, was that you cannot have chickens within 50 feet of a structure, which means that even if it's your own home, you can't have chickens within 50 feet of it. I think it was intended that you don't have it within 50 feet of your neighbor's house if it was built on a property line or what have you. And I mean, with the added interest and the price of eggs going up and people wanting to do stuff and be self-sufficient now, and I think that, I mean, during COVID-19, I was throwing some numbers out. That's why I wanted a discussion item to figure out what you guys thought a fair practice was for keeping, if somebody wanted to have chickens, can they go right up to the property line? Should it be 50 feet? Should it reduce down to, I mean, pools are 6 feet. You can have pools within 6 feet. Shed you can't have closer than 10 feet from a property line. Fences you can build on a property line. So I mean, it's, and I've also taught, I mean, I do a lot of work with the farmers market. I inquired with a bunch of the animal raisers over there and the meat providers, and they a lot of them said, because local Dr. John Bilecki asked me questions about this when I had a discussion with him, and he goes, but Kevin, what about disease? What about the fecal matter? What about this? What about that? And I brought it up to a lot of the meat vendors, and they said, if you have a farm in Wuhan, China with 200 chickens, yeah, you're going to have a lot of disease. You're going to have a lot of corroded fecal matter. It's going to build up. You're going to have 6, maybe 12 chickens, and that's.
So would we put a limit on the number of chickens?
You could. I mean, right now the code doesn't have a limit on chickens. The code doesn't actually talk about roosters at all.
What about ostriches?
I
Like I see a slippery slope to all these people having ostriches in the city of Olean right up to their property line. I think that'd be a problem.
really.
We allow chickens already, right? Yeah.
We do. And so if you do meet these requirements, or if you don't meet these requirements and nobody complains about it, I mean, essentially you could have an ostrich in the city. I mean, but you could have a rooster in the city if you meet these requirements. And I mean, 50 feet from a property line, you're still hearing cock-a-doodle-doo for a couple blocks. So
What if it lives in your house? You can have a chicken in your house?
I don't believe you can have a chicken in your house. I mean, that would be up to a code determination. But the other thing too with the chicken law is that chickens are required to have maintained feeding and watering grounds as well as a maintained coop, and they have to be well maintained and to health standards. I know that I've gotten complaints from constituents about landlords that don't pay attention to their tenants' dogs and they poop in a small confined area and neighbors can smell it over the fence. EJ's had no problem going over there, giving them an ordered remedy and making them clean up all the dog fecal matter and making sure that it doesn't happen again, things like that. So I mean, if you do get a complaint, there are already mechanisms in there for code enforcement to be able to handle it. I just think getting rid of some of the restrictions for the property boundaries. And then, so like I was saying, you're not going to have those, you're going to have a small amount of chickens so the regular cleaning isn't so bad because, I mean, you're not going to have 50 chickens on a property. If somebody tries to, clearly they're not going to be able to maintain, I mean, there's some discretion there for the codes.
The first thing that comes to mind to me is we have a problem in the city with feral cats. Is this going to increase that problem? And is it going to increase rodents coming into the city to feast on chickens and eggs and that? I don't know.
Attract coyotes, etc.
So those are
Can you train a chicken to stay in a wireless net?
things that you have to think about.
Sure, no, and I get it. I mean, so I was talking with Nick because what always irks me is a constitutional issue, right? Like, I'm an omnivore. I eat vegetables as well as fruits and meats. Some people only eat vegetables and fruits. So they are allowed to have a garden and nobody complains about it. But what if you're only a carnivore? What if you decide you don't want to eat vegetables and fruits, you want to just eat meats and eat eggs and stuff like that? I mean, to me, like, you don't give them...
You're very logical. I appreciate that. I guess it's good. Yeah.
So...
Are chickens good for winter? You got to keep them in a heat?
Actually, yeah, a lot of people put a heat light bulb on them.
Freaking dirty.
Hey, let the man speak.
They a lot of people keep a heat lamp on them, but actually, according to the farmers, they're actually very resilient. It's not necessary. They as long as they have a nice tight niche coop where they can all huddle up together during the winter months, they don't need any heat source or anything. As long as they're out of the wind, they're pretty resilient. So.
Do we allow chickens on the oats bus? Did you bring a chicken on the oats bus?
I mean, I guess if you had a one of them certifications with a note from a doctor saying it was an emotional support chicken, maybe so.
In all seriousness, Kevin, I mean, 50 feet does seem quite.
Now we're getting serious? Okay, thanks.
I've been serious the whole time. For the record, I have been serious the whole time.
But 50 feet does seem. Do you have any examples of what other municipalities do? Because that does seem quite far of a distance to keep your chicken coop 50 feet from a property boundary, right? So, I mean, I don't know about going 6 feet to someone. I wouldn't want 6 feet from my property, a chicken coop, but
Sure.
25 feet or something like that. I mean, are there other municipalities? Or is 50 feet the standard that people?
You know what, John? You caught me at a loss because that's the research I didn't do. I didn't check with other municipalities. And something else I was hoping to put forth with a PL was, a guesstimate from you guys on what you thought would be a good, reasonable number, as well as adding some adage there for neighbors to give a waiver. So right now, if you have it, somebody else complains 6 blocks away who has no business with you. They don't live next to it. They don't deal with it, and all the other neighbors around you have no problem with it. I already had 3 neighbors as I talked to them. They said if you got chickens, I would sign a waiver, and 2 of them said they already have neighbors that have coops right up to a fence line on the property line, and they have no problems with it. But right now, if you're violating the code, you're violating the code, and so.
I think you're going to have an issue if people have roosters in their yard and they're going off at 6 a.m.
And I'm fine with making a compromise to reduce roosters too, because actually speaking with the farmers, Jason brought that up to me, and I believe John did too when I spoke with him offline about this. They suggested hey, maybe you nix roosters. And speaking with the farmers, most farmers around here don't actually have success breeding chickens, so you wouldn't really need a rooster on site. Even if you're trying to breed them for food, it's a lot of extra work, and you can get fertilized eggs or buy your chickens to.
Got the chicken, the rooster, and the hen.
So the chicken. So you could limit the code to just specify. You could change the. I mean, it shouldn't. Maybe baby fowl isn't the right word in the code. Maybe it should be hens, not chickens, not fowl, because that could be.
Whatever you do here, I believe this is going to cause a lot of discussion around the city.
On the Facebook.
Not only there, but everywhere. And I don't know, will this take a public hearing to change this, or?
We got to be careful. We'll get the big chicken agenda pushed out there, and then the one that show.
How about turkey?
I don't think turkeys are. Well, I mean, turkey is fowl, I believe.
So, I mean, I kind of failed Kevin a little bit because I vowed to speak with some folks I know with chickens. I haven't done it yet, so I think the discussion, I'd like it to stay open.
Totally.
Next time, I don't have chickens. I probably won't ever have chickens, but I do like people to have some freedoms if it makes sense. And I know some people that have chickens in the city, and I want to see what they think about it. Are they meeting the code? Could somebody walk in and tell them to get rid of their chickens? If so, I want to figure out how I feel about that.
Wouldn't that be what a country is called? I mean, country rural living. I mean, I sure as hell.
Well,
don't get me wrong. I sure as hell wouldn't want neighbors with chickens living next to me. I mean,
Jay, people, where do they actually live? The people that have the chickens. I mean, what type of neighborhoods? Where are they?
East End, King Street. I know a couple. I'm not going to. It's not spread out or anything like any. There's not any extra room there. Other than what Kevin's talking about, 50-foot setbacks. I haven't been there to see how it meets code, but I have a feeling it's
I'm
gonna
on
be,
State Street.
it's gonna
I
be
just
tough.
can't picture my neighbors. I can't picture I can't,
Remember, we're not.
my neighbors had chickens, I'd be eating chicken.
You'd be eating chicken?
I'd eat the chicken.
Oh, you'd be getting free eggs. I mean.
No. Here's the other thing you're gonna look at. Are these people gonna be selling it?
If they sell eggs now, they're violating eggs and markets
That's what
law.
I'm getting at. Are we gonna have to be policing that?
No, we would. The codes usually takes a complaint like that and forwards it to the eggs and markets. A lot of people call the health department on things that involve the Department of Eggs and Markets within New York State. So like Camrys, for example.
Are we gonna
is-
know if they're selling these on their back porch?
I think they're taking donations for eggs.
Yeah.
See?
And most neighbors, if they're buying the eggs, they're not gonna sell it.
Yeah, but apparently they have no problem with it. I mean, it's like the neighbors that I described that have them right up to the fence line. They actually didn't. They asked the lady when she got the chickens. They were like, "When did you get these chickens?" 8 months prior to them noticing the chickens were even there.
I don't know.
So-
I just, from what I see, I've had a close friend had chickens. They let them run wild. The area is just filthy. So I don't know. Maybe it's the way they kept them. I don't know.
Sure, and I mean,
You know what I mean?
that's what a
This is
code.
what I see. That's what I'm getting at.
Right. I mean, yeah. No. I mean, if you have a lot of chickens in one area, they will eat the grass down to nothing and be
No, just the droppings of that too. That's what I mean. Yeah.
A lot of places, a lot of people use chicken tractors, is what they call them. It's a coop with a fenced-in cage, and you move it around, and it allows them to eat bugs and ticks and fleas, as well as other things. They'll eat grass as well, and that'll keep you can use the chicken to maintain your yard as well as.
Yeah. I can see a problem.
So those brown eggs for sale down by Westies, that's illegal. There's a sign down there all the time, saying brown eggs for sale.
I mean, regardless, I think this is a very valuable conversation.
See what I mean? I mean,
Well, Weston Mills, that's outside the city, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it, I just wondering, I mean, somebody said.
Well, I mean, if you get registered with Eggs and Markets, yeah, then it would be legal. But they'd have to produce that. You know what I mean? So. Sorry, Paul, you were saying something.
No, I was just, I think this is probably a good start, and something that, it would behoove us to, bring this back to the table another time.
Sure.
And
And
really dig into it more.
And just one last point, yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah, of course.
the code also doesn't allow chickens the fowl to run at large, so as soon as it steps foot off the property line, I mean,
yeah, keep them out of leash.
We have a hard enough time with cats, and now you're gonna.
I mean, most people fence them in because of the cats, I mean, so.
No, I mean, we have a law that you have to keep your cats on your own property too.
Yeah.
And now we're gonna be chasing, the cats will be chasing the chickens and,
Yeah.
What about cockfighting?
Well, that's covered under Eggs and Markets under the humane animal
You
law.
don't have to worry, that's already illegal.
I looked into most of that stuff when we were wondering about what we do about stray cats. Eggs and Markets handles most of that because DEC handles wildlife, where Eggs and Markets handle domesticated animals.
Make sure that question's in a minute, too, if you want to do it as a document.
This is all transcribed. Don't forget.
Thank you, Kevin. It was very thorough.
no, we can have
Any, one item not on the agenda, discussion, going to be, walkable land, phase 2 project bids.
How can it follow? How can it follow?
We opened bids a week Friday for walkable land phase 2. This is the capital project at Main Street between Union Street in front, and then Front Street between Union Street and Second Avenue. I've provided you with some documents, I guess starting with the budget, because we need to talk about awarding this as early as next Tuesday if we want to get into construction this year. So the first half is where all our funding is coming from. It's a $1.5 million project. $357,000 of that is city funding. The remaining $1.2 million is all reimbursable. So I took that $1.5 million project budget and then compared it with committed funds already, design costs, inspection costs, and you know, our remaining construction funding, and then I took that and I compared it against the low bidder of the project, which you know, was presumably going to be D&H Construction out of Arcade. You know, I'll run you through the bid alternates, but we have construction funding to fund the base bid plus alternative one, and maybe we can turn to the plans a little bit. Alternative two, we have a funding shortfall of roughly $137,000. So you know, I've given you the plans to take a look at the project a little bit. I highlighted in blue the alternate work. Bid alt 1 is the work on Front Street extension. You know, the project is, just to give you a really quick summary, is surrounded around traffic calming, walkability, business-friendly corridor, reduced pavement, and green space. You know, as you can see, everything in color is, you know, the work that would be completed out there. Bid alternate 2, you know, which is probably going to lead to, you know, the biggest part of the discussion. I mean, I'd like to see the whole project completed, but just for your, you know, for your consideration, bid alternate 2 includes the lighting and lighted bollards on the south side of the project. So everything south of the river, which includes 18 light poles and lighted bollards, is the additional, you know, $137,000 that, you know, I guess I would ask you to consider to fund. You know, we have the choice, of course, between, you know, the awarding the base bid, bid alt plus 1, bid alt plus 2, and I have to get, you know, back to the state about that, and our consultant will work on the award. One note, I guess, to help fund the project, we just received an incentive check from National Grid for the LED conversion of $86,000. That could be a potential funding source, and that would leave roughly a $51,000 shortfall in the project. I don't know if we've done this often in the past, but when we reimburse, we've already got a bond for this project. When we reimburse with all the agencies, you know, we could perhaps take the $51,000 out of the reimbursable money and bond for, instead of $357,000, we would bond for, you know, that plus whatever, you know, we were short. But $51,000 is what we're estimating right now.
So neither one of the alternate versions deviate from the 10-foot shared use path, correct? That's in either. That's no matter what. That's happening.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the light bollards? What do you mean by that, Bob?
You know, when we did Lincoln Park and we did the Warvets project, we kind of evaluated the lighting there and the spacing. So we think what's going to work best is like a 15-foot light pole spaced with a bollard in between. So you'd have pedestrian level lighting. It would light up. You know, and you can set bollards to point a certain way. So a lot of the design has been bollards pointed towards pedestrians at crosswalks. You know, I mean, most collisions between a pedestrian and vehicle are at night. There was one at night at this particular intersection in Main and Berry Street. So that was what our thinking was when we put together that design, to be decorative, to look good, to be safe.
Where do we have one of those now? Anywhere?
Lincoln Park. There's probably 6 or 8 of them.
Oh, those little
The shorter one.
shorter.
Lighted bollard. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
That'd be nice.
So along like the sidewalk area.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 10-foot wide shared use path that will accommodate bikes and pedestrians. More than likely, we'll put a stripe down the middle of it. It's signed with stop signs, with proper crossings. That lighting will be mostly along the pathway, right? It dead ends at Front Street and 2nd Avenue with the intention of expanding it someday, perhaps down Front Street to tie into Warvets, and then back around Union Street as a loop.
I don't think we appreciate like how much potential this could possibly have. Like the idea of a 10-foot shared path that does a
complete loop around the entire city is immeasurably beneficial and attractive. Like, holy crap, if this could really happen, this would be awesome.
And it'll keep kids off the sidewalk.
Yes, yes. Pardon?
Every night there's people riding their bikes,
Yeah.
kids and strollers and us older folks all walking, and I think this would just enhance the quality of life, especially over here where we always think of the hospital areas, our medical corridor,
Yep.
you know, and people love walking over there.
Think of visitors coming into the city,
Yeah.
staying at the Holiday Inn Express,
Yep.
what they would view there, and it'd just be so inviting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we should cheapskate this, especially this part. And like you said, Bob, this is the stepping stone to Front Street, right? Like, I wish there was a way we could right now extend the 10-foot multi-use path to School Street, because that's where the sidewalk ends on Front Street. If we could just get that much further.
We could probably put a 4-foot walk in.
Even that would be good, so that people don't rush.
Where is that, along the,
Yeah.
there, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that.
You mean at this point?
What, are you talking about the levee?
Yeah, where there's no,
No sidewalk,
But you know what, the kids walk on that side.
'Cause it's
along that wall, right?
We had a sidewalk.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, we could, wherever it's dead ended at Second Ave, we could, well, I take it back, it's First Ave, sorry, where we're stopping at the end of the service store. We could put something there. I mean, you're taught as, I guess, you know, sidewalk designer, that where there's beaten down paths, you should put something there.
Well, and that's exactly it. So right at School Street is when where the sidewalk ends, and it just turns into gravel, single track.
Yeah.
And, I run it all the time, and I'll run in the road because I don't want to run through the long grass.
Is that portion of Front Street an unimproved street? Like a lot of times we have unimproved streets that don't have curbs and they don't have sidewalks, and then the city comes in and puts a special assessment on, like, you know, a couple blocks, and then they put in the curbing and the sidewalks, and then
We have curving there, it's just that one down.
there's just,
The street was widened at one point.
oh,
It
gotcha.
used to be like 20 feet wide before Front Street Extension was there, and then the state came in and widened it, and they did it all through the 70s and 80s.
I think our long-term goal should be to see that 2 mile loop come to fruition, at all costs. I think that is the one thing that can possibly bring all of the neighborhoods together and truly save our downtown area. I do agree with that, because that gets
First,
people out
second.
walking and biking in a safe methodology.
then school, and third
So
comes off of it.
and shared use paths are gonna be key for that. They are in other communities, and they're proven. So I'm 100%, I agree with Paul. I don't think we wanna go cheap on this one, we wanna do it the right way.
No, I don't think either side
For
has
that,
sidewalk on it. Yes, there's a-
In the plans
Maybe
for
second
the
half, yeah.
DRI Southeast
So
Street project,
the sidewalk on the side of the road?
the walk only in phase 3.
On both sides, I think it ends here at this side, too.
We're heading that direction, right? This is the next thing.
Up until you get to like JR's.
Strategic.
Really? Yeah. Right where Delaware is where the sidewalks pick back up.
Like in your highway plan number 3 here, like on Front Street, I'm assuming this is in front of the hospital.
Yeah.
Would that, I see you got trees there, which is
I mean, I know we're
good,
here.
but those red dots
And
there,
that
would
just
that get
trails
some
off
grass?
into that person's yard.
Yeah, that's grass, that's just,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's grass.
the plan is black and white, I just turned on all colors, so the design line.
No, I think
Yeah,
it-
it is, it's grass.
I think that's good, because that would be easier for DPW to maintain. I mean, we're adding all this extra work for DPW, and we're not increasing any staff, and we don't want it to look terrible, so I think the grass is a lot better than.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, shrubbery.
There's a couple small landscape areas.
Yeah,
But
less
mostly,
is
like,
more.
You know, Bill and I talked, and like,
We don't own a hedge trimmer though.
putting brick areas and planter on top of it is a lot easier to
Long as we're not
it's
seeing
easily, you
landscapers.
don't have to maintain.
Yep, agreed.
That's exciting.
When will this happen?
We need,
This
When your grandkids are, I'm just kidding. I said when your grandkids are born.
we received that check for $87,000 for the lighting, so back towards this, I believe, would you say about we need an additional 51,000 to put this plan in place?
So if we take that from contingency or fund balance?
We'd probably take that out of the fund balance if we just added to.
Because we
Right.
already have some.
We've got some cushion there, so I would.
We don't need the funding now, it would be, whenever Carrie and I work on reimbursements, I would think it'd just get rolled into the bond, I guess, we have to push easier, but maybe the mayor and Fred and I could update you next week if we were to put a resolution on to award both the bid alternates, and we can have a plan in place.
Bill, we haven't committed that money, the 80-something thousand, for the lighting towards anything, right? This is as good of a reason as any.
Anything that gets people out moving.
I think we should, I don't wanna cut corners or anything like that, we need to get this done, like, let's break ground.
That was a roundabout
It's
joke.
gotta be pushing time frames anyway, right?
We'll start this summer. This
Really?
project will start in the month.
That's what you've been saying about that water line.
Yeah, Jesus, Bob.
Anything else, Bob? No. Any other questions on this guy? Alright. That being said, there's no committee reports to approve. I will make a motion to adjourn.
No executive session?
Did we have one?
No, I just.
Oh, okay.
We've had some interesting ones last couple of
I thought we just go into executive session and talk trash about the fire chief.
I'll second it, Paul, I'm sorry.
Well, just so everybody knows too, we are getting some, Chief Secretary, we are getting some inklings on your Facebook things and that there may be another rally here tomorrow night. So we'll be meeting tomorrow, to discuss that and see what our intel is on it right now.
Yeah, so if you hurry up past the open container, the ralliers really like to drink out the State Union through the
It'll hurt them less when we get to fight back. I actually had a constituent reach out to me today. Do we have any plans in place for like a citywide cleanup this year? Has anybody thought about it? Is the city planning anything, or we get a lot of people stuck at home and
Sorry, for the $35 and put all your stuff out.
yeah.
I think we should do that again. I've had
I got one 10 minutes ago on a Facebook message, so I figured I'd throw it up.
not fine.
And a lot of people are stuck on it.
Just cleaning up, doing spring cleaning. So
John, you seconded my motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
yeah.
We'll put together the numbers on a citywide cleanup and get them